Hey folks, my name's Sheridan, and I have opinions on this new Freddie Gibbs project, You Only Die Once. Freddie Gibbs is a 42-year-old rapper from Eastside Gary, Indiana, that released his first known mixtape, Full Metal Jacket, back in 2004, before steadily releasing solo work and not really gaining much momentum before appearing on Jeezy's The Real Is Back 2, Sean Price's Mike Tyson, and Danny Brown's Old. It wasn't until 2014's Pinata, produced by Madlib, that Freddie's solo work started to be taken seriously, putting him on the map and granting him his first cult classic status album. Since then, Freddie's continued to raise his profile through a number of releases, including 2018's Curreri collaboration Freddie, a second record produced solely by Madlib in 2019, Bandana, followed in 2020 by a record produced by The Alchemist, Alfredo. Interest was rising in his solo work due to his sheer and consistent quality, collaborations with relevant artists like Mick Jenkins, Kanye, and Schoolboy Q, as well as a habit of staying in the hip-hop dramasphere through his instigative behavior both on Twitter and in real life. Freddie has been constantly growing his fan base from the very devoted cult following that he's already had, and it seems like he's not going to be stopped. I first came across his music through a Pandora suggestion for his Pinata song Lakers with Ab-Soul back in 2016, but I was definitely one of the casual Freddie fans as a teenager that was really fully sold by Bandana and even got the chance to see him live at Day in Vegas back in 2021. He lived up to his instigative reputation, beautifully convincing the crowd to chant "F the police" on multiple occasions, and just in general putting on a hilarious performance. Fast forward to 2024, Freddie fans have been teased with a third Madlib collaboration that has now been pushed back to 2025. But Freddie's been kind enough to provide us with this 37-minute, 13-song appetizer that plays off the 2017 effort, You Only Live Twice, titled You Only Die Once. Here are my thoughts. The first track, Status, features what I would say is now a pretty commonly used underground hip-hop sample. I refuse to try to pronounce it, but I'll put it up here so you can see. But in general, Freddie just provides a pretty run-of-the-mill verse. It's pretty short, don't get much, and then there's just this like goofy skit at the end, and that's it. Due to the very average yet passable verse from Freddie, I'd still very easily rank the Mac Miller and Rick Ross collaboration Insomniac well above it, as well as the Flatbush duo The Underachievers version of the sample, Chrysalis. The Prince of Darkness introduction and the skit at the end is kind of funny, but for a 2-minute song on a 37-minute EP, I would have liked to hear more of a statement from Freddie on the first song. Luckily, Freddie immediately hits his stride on the second song, Cosmo Freestyle, and hammers in 2 minutes of unrelenting bars. Opening up his verse reminiscing about recording his very first songs back in his hometown of Gary, Indiana in 2004, Freddie wastes very little time before getting to what is likely some classic trolling, in referencing Keefe D's interview with one of hip-hop journalism's most toxic parasites, Vlad TV, that ended up being integral in getting him arrested for hip-hop legend Tupac Shakur's death. As the song progresses, he reflects on the poor situations he's been in, as well as the bad decisions he's made, but celebrates the perseverance he's had to get him out of the rough times. The minute-long devil skit at the end isn't too annoying, but I'm not sure it adds anything. I do love the production on this one though, as it adds a nice groove, even in the absence of Freddie's bars. Moving on to the third track, Wolverine, Freddie hits us with a pretty classic and timeless flow of his, over some chill production that features a delicate female vocal sample to carry the melody and a smooth, jazzy bass line. Freddie expresses a genuine boredom with the status he's reached, and a genuine desire to see what's next. He seems unimpressed by the obstacles so far, and wonders if there's more. I appreciate the sentiment of feeling unsatisfied with the goals that you've maybe set for yourself, and feeling like it's not as fulfilling as you thought it would be once you reach them. I also think he makes an important statement about fighting the wrong battles instead of addressing the root issue, which he describes as Europeans, but I think could be interpreted as, white imperialists or white colonialists in general. He then brings up Weinstein and Epstein in comparison to R. Kelly, making clear he doesn't condone any of their actions, but questions why the two white offenders remained rich, while R. Kelly sings for commissary and has heat in his library. While I do personally agree that R. Kelly has made some dope music in the past, I don't really see how that's relevant to the abuse, the displayed predatory behavior, or literal sex crimes he's committed. I also think it's important to note that Epstein is in fact not alive anymore, and while it's a sick fact that Weinstein is still alive and still rich, his net worth has dropped from an estimated $300 million to $25 million. Well, I do think that the amount of money that these untalented white producers and businessmen make just from funding or being involved with an artistic project in relation to what the actual talent makes, especially when the talent isn't a white man, is a serious conversation that needs to be had more often. The fact still stands that Epstein's estate value was also estimated to be around $600 million, which shows just how much more money we're talking about with these guys compared to R. Kelly, who had a net worth of just $100 million at the peak of his wealth. I do think that black celebrities are held to a much higher and more unrealistic standard than white ones, and the industry as well as fans are much more eager to tear them down at any sign of controversy. I just don't think this is one of those cases. I guess I would agree that Epstein and Weinstein are more heinous offenders, but with the level of disgusting and evil acts that these three have committed, I think it's really weird to even compare them. Let's just say none of them should have any access to society or wealth. This one is the first song so far to not have an overdrawn devil skit take up way too much time though, so it gets some extra points for that. Track 4, Brick Fees, is one that doesn't really move me too much either way. It might be too harsh to say that there's no reason for this song to exist, but I don't really see what it adds to Freddie's catalog in general. The production fits the vibe of what Freddie has presented so far on this thing, but it's also the most monotonous and unoriginal so far on this thing. The halftime switch up for the second half of this song is maybe a little more captivating, but in general, the basic sonics mixed with some of Freddie's most average lyricism on this thing is mostly a snoozer for me. Hey, I do appreciate the lack of skit again though. Freddie picks up the lyricism immediately on track 5, Rabbit Island, over some super spaced out and vibey production. Making lots of references and dropping some of the hilarious one-liners he's known for, this one isn't overly dense with substance, but really just rides and could be spun among both music nerdy friends and casual hip-hop fans alike. If there's any overarching theme on this one, it's definitely the growing feeling that Freddie feels unsettled in his spot. Between knowing he's underrated, feeling not far enough removed from the life he led before fame, and a general sense of personal ambition, Freddie is definitely seeking more while looking to preserve what he's gained so far. Track 6, It's Your Anniversary, should be immediately familiar to anyone that's a fan of early 90s R&B, as the beat is a near exact sample of Tony Tony's similarly titled 1993 hit, Anniversary. Freddie comes out hot while also providing the introspective substance that I feel like this project has been lacking up to this point. He reflects on a woman he used to be involved with, expressing that it was a bad idea to get involved with groupies, and that he's done doing that entirely. He then makes some pretty interesting admissions that not only has he been caught up in trying to be more commercial, but he claims that rappers he's reached out to have either been unwilling or outright denied Freddie's attempts to collaborate due to what Freddie thinks is his controversial nature. Freddie can be a bit dramatic, but if that's true, I am definitely curious who would have turned him down. He then says he's actually been more focused on movies than music, which feels like a bit of a contradiction considering his clear desire to carve out a legacy within hip-hop, but is honestly something I can relate to as someone who wants to make a mark in many different areas and often have trouble focusing on growing any one thing that I'm working on. As the track progresses, he works off the anniversary concept, making references to flowers relative to both romantic anniversaries, but also drawing parallels to death dates. I don't think this is Freddie's most cohesive conceptual cut ever, but the beat is so welcoming and nostalgic while accompanying Freddie's well-written lyrics and perfectly executed delivery that it's easily one of my favorites on this project. The 7th slot is dedicated to a nearly 2-minute long interlude that just consists of a series of voicemails from a disgruntled romantic partner and, you guessed it, the devil. He's clearly ignoring both until the end when the devil won't let him. I do respect that the skit has been committed to through the track list so far, but it feels only loosely related to the actual content musically on this project, and call me boring, but I don't really think that it adds anything. The 8th song, 30 Girlfriends, is one I wasn't really crazy about on first listen, mostly because I think the hook is pretty forgettable, but the more I've listened to it, I've realized that's really the only drawback, and it's not too bad. The production is super glossy, and Freddie flexes some really infectious flows on the verses. Topically, this one is more of a luxurious flex fest on the first half, but the second half sees Freddie getting a lot more introspective, and I find it pretty interesting. I actually also really love the string section towards the end that kind of accompanies his whispered and staggered delivery as the song fades out. Moving on to the 9th track, Steel Doors, Freddie opens up in a somewhat tongue-in-cheek manner, making clear his intention to cement his legacy before AI can effectively rip him off. He then invokes some violent imagery describing a shootout with the pigs. He continues to rap about the chaotic and dangerous nature of the drug trade, and very effectively lays out the steel door metaphor and describing how stuck he felt in that lifestyle and how difficult it was to open up a route that led him to the opportunities he has now. This is the first song where I feel like the devil commentary is actually super necessary, as it further describes the lifestyle barrier as a revolving door, which only adds potency to the original metaphor. Track 10, Walk It Off, is one I didn't originally gravitate toward, but I realized it's because for some reason the downloaded version I had on Apple Music had it clean. It shows as explicit, but when I went and listened on Spotify, it was a completely different version where you get all the swear words. But for some reason, my Apple Music version didn't do that. I think it's fixed now. I don't know. Once I listened on Spotify, though, I'm like, wow, this is an earworm. I'm a huge sucker for reverb-soaked high-end piano loops, especially ones so sporadically and organically implemented. Freddie's initial flow actually reminds me so much of Jeezy, but his execution is so much more free-flowing and dripping in personality. While this one isn't a well of wisdom, substance, or introspection, it's still topically engaging and more suitable for intimate social settings than social deep dives anyway. Approaching the end of the record, track 11, Ruthless, features another classic 90s R&B sample of the four-piece boy band 112's hit, Cupid. The hook is laid back and simple, but seems sincere, and Freddie definitely expresses some frustration and even self-disgust over some of the women that he got himself involved with in the past. There's definitely a tabloid drama backstory that I could start drawing parallels to, but that's not really the story I want to cover or the channel I want to run. It's just not me. And honestly, I don't really know that it's any of our business outside of what Freddie tells us in his music. In general, though, I like this one a lot, and I think the sample was flipped beautifully to fundamentally accompany a very different sentiment than that of the original song. The second to last cut, Origami, is not only my favorite song on this project, but one of my favorite cuts from Freddie ever. The song opens up with a sample of Libyan legend and former leader Muammar Gaddafi's February 2011 promise to never leave Libya, who was sadly assassinated by Imperial NATO forces less than a year after this promise. The people of Libya overwhelmingly supported Gaddafi, who provided them with free education, free healthcare, housing, and water. But America's imperial alliance couldn't stomach his success. I found this to be a really fitting setting for the song thematically. He definitely invokes some of the most harrowing imagery through profound lyricism on this one, with sequences like this being the highlights. Still feel the pressure and tension from my past tense. Gunshots, mama crying, the sound of blackness. Tears in my pillow as I lay in the dark. Broken soul. But I mastered turning pain into art. There are also loads of clever references on this one, including a storyline in HBO's The Wire, where they literally hide folks that they permanently put to sleep in the walls of abandoned Baltimore houses. The haunting female vocal sample beautifully accompanies Freddie's more serious than usual lyrics, and the outro skit actually adds to the song topically. Now, while I do like the track on the set, I don't think I'm as crazy about it as some other Freddie fans seem to be. The themes of death, going too young, and losing those close to you are all things that I can resonate with, and I actually really love the production. The beat really feels like a smooth ride out to end the project. I honestly just don't find the hook all that catchy or memorable, and my biggest gripe with it is the nature of having the surprise of Diddy's arrest be the overarching sentiment to tie together the tragic loss of a bunch of people. I don't think Freddie is saying or intentionally implying this at all, but the line, "Goddamn, they done got Diddy," comes off as not exactly apologetic, but almost like, ah, shit, that's too bad. I'm a huge Freddie fan, so knowing him, I'm pretty confident that's obviously not his intention here, but I do think the messaging could be a bit more clear. Otherwise, it's a pretty solid song that I just don't think is too effective as an outro. So, to wrap things up, while I do think You Only Die Once is probably Freddie's worst outing since 2017's You Only Live Twice, that just goes to show how prolific and consistent he is as an artist. Considering this is really acting as a hold me over for his heavily anticipated Madlib produced sequel to 2014's Pinata and 2018's Bandana titled Montana, I'm not even remotely disappointed in the slight dip in quality for Freddie, as it's more than passable as a light injection to prevent the withdrawal after what's been 2 years since the last full-length Freddie record. Even considering the lack of cohesion in a dud or two on You Only Die Once, I've still got to give this thing at least a 7.48. All right, y'all. Thank you very much. That's another video in the tuck. I got more coming. I promise it's not just music reviews, but if you have anything you want me to review, let me know. Comment, subscribe, hit the bell, like this stuff. Like it. Do that. Do the thing. I need it. Help this channel grow. And I'll keep coming with great content. Peace.